everybody, my name is Chris Burns. I am the artist and creator of Chikara Power of God. And in this brand new YouTube series, I'm going to be showing you guys how to become a manga artist, step by step, starting with how to come up with an idea and ending with how to get published. So without further ado, let's get started, everyone. Intro!
Hey everybody, welcome back to episode 2. If you guys watched episode 1, you already are coming in with great knowledge, great enthusiasm, and just overall great energy. We got a lot of views from that last video and a lot of comments and a lot of support. We are like at 816 subs. We're almost to 1K. You guys love that video. So I hope you show the same love to this one because we're diving right in with some story mapping today. So what is story mapping? Is that an actual term in the industry? Or is it something I made up? I'm gonna have y'all look it up and find out. Because I feel like it's one or the other. But I'm leaning towards I think I made it up. But for real, story mapping, what is it? So story mapping, in my experience, story mapping is mapping out your story. Kind of self-explanatory in a way, but there's a lot more detail to what it actually means. So story mapping is mapping out your story from pretty much beginning, middle, and end. This is a process that I did personally when I was coming up with Chikara back in 2018. And it's not as strenuous as you might think, but you can add as much detail as you want to this. It's all up to you on how much detail you really want to add in this process. So when you guys are story mapping, you're, like I said, breaking up to beginning, middle, and end. If you think of it as a roller coaster, you want to have the beginning where the car is right here, the car climbs to the climax, and then it descends all the way to the end. That's pretty much what story mapping is. And another big question that I get is, is my story good? Like, how do I come up with a good story? Well, you know what I'm gonna say. Research and inspiration. Guys, you gotta do your research and get inspiration before you start doing anything. And I said that in episode 1. So I hope you guys are just remembering that. Research, and find your inspiration. I don't know what you guys' inspiration is. So I'll tell you what mine are. When I was working on Chikara, and even just before working on this story, because I worked on a couple before Chikara, it's Naruto, My Hero Academia, and Attack on Titan. Those 3 are my biggest inspiration in terms of when I'm coming up with stories and characters, because it's not just for the story. And it's not even just those 3 for character design either, but that's a whole different story for a video coming later on. But let's just talk about story for now. Don't even think about characters. Your story, what do you want your story to be? Do you want it to be, like I said in the first video, do you want it to be like romance? Do you want it to be isekai, shonen, shoujo? I don't know what genre you're trying to work on, but whatever genre you're trying to work on, you should be studying that genre, watching anime from that genre, reading manga from that genre, figuring out what works, what doesn't work in a story. What do you personally like in a story? Some people don't like overpowered characters in shonen, like One Punch Man. They think that it's stupid and they don't like the show, but other people love it. So figure out what you like and what you don't like, because once you figure that out, then once you start writing your story, you have some techniques and inspiration that will inspire you to come up with ideas that'll make your story just as great and just as iconic. So you have your ideas. You have all your wonderful ideas or your number one idea that you want to work on. You've done a little research now. You've done some inspiration. You have maybe an imagery board or a Pinterest page filled with tons of stuff that you've researched, and you're like, I have a rough little bubble of an idea, and these are the shows and this is the manga that has gotten me to this point. But now, how do I get this idea that's in my head on paper or digitally on a computer to where I can start getting details into it and mapping it out hardcore before we move on to the next process? I'm going to tell you some tips on how to do that. So from my personal experience, when I was coming up with ideas, or even still now when I come up with ideas for characters and story content, I just use my phone. Like, some people like to write it down because they feel like, it might mentally just help them. Some people like typing it. Some people like putting it on their phone. I put it on my phone. If I have an idea or a rough idea, I'll just jot it down, whether it's just a character, I don't know, black character that can fly with a skateboard. I don't know. I just described someone from Fire Force, but it's like, that character, or Eastern character, Middle Eastern character, Western character, white character, just regardless of race, but just writing it down goes a long way, because then when you're coming back later on and you're trying to draw it, sketch it, you already have it on your notes, you already have your ideas, you already have the concept in your phone or on your notepad, and you can go from there instead of just getting on your computer or your sketch pad, looking at a blank canvas and trying to come up with something right out of your head on the fly. Because most of the time that doesn't work, and then you get frustrated because it's not working, and then you quit. So when you're writing these things down, I want you guys to think of it in kind of like, break it down into I say 3 steps for a lot of things because it just helps me remember them myself. So if it helps you to have 3 steps as well, say it's 3 steps. But if you break it down to 3 steps on your notes or in your tablet, whatever you're writing it down on, have your pitch, have your story summary, and then have your story rough idea from beginning, middle, and end. So when you guys have your idea and you're like, oh, I can write it down in my notes. I have a quick idea written down in my notes. Now you can start the detail process, because I want you guys to actually start thinking along, if I'm going to pitch this idea to a company, because some of you might want to pitch, some of you might want to be self-published. But if you're, regardless of whether you're doing A or B, think of it as if you're pitching it to someone. Get in an elevator, a company CEO walks in. What's your story about? You should immediately be able to tell him in 3 sentences or less what your story is about to grab his attention. So think of it that way. When you're typing down your notes, write down in 3 sentences, main character, powers, whatever the case may be, his or her end goal or quest. That way they can see the character, they can see the world, and they can see the goal. That's just really super simple. Once you have that down, your little 3-sentence pitch, bring it down to the paragraph version. Now you can write about this character's name, they're from this place, they're this age, they have a normal life until this happens, blah blah blah, they have powers, they're traveling now to find the whatever for the world, and blah blah blah. Typical shonen story kind of that I just explained, but that goes for anything, whether it's romance. This girl is in this grade, she's this age, there's this boy, he's on this sports team, she loves him, now she's on a quest to get him. I don't know, no one says quest to get someone, but you understand what I mean. Once you have the little paragraph version, which if you want to think about it in this way, it can be like on the back of a manga. So on the back of the manga, most stories, not just manga, but most books, they have a summary of the story. So that way people, when they pick it up, they look at the cover, that looks like a cool character. What's this story about? Boom, paragraph tells you what the story is about. That way, if they want to buy it, they can buy it. So think of it that way. Write the paragraph version. If you have your hypothetical manga book, that's kind of what it that's kind of what it should look like. Now, the next part, when you're writing down your story and your story mapping, this is the part where some people can be really, really simple with their idea, and some people can go really, really detailed. That's up to you guys. Some people like to really just have tons of content. Some people like to have just enough, and then it's like an experience, or like a little wave for the rest of the story. So for this step is when you can actually write beginning, middle, and end, a rough summary of the entire story. The character in the beginning, up until a certain point, then the middle up until a certain point, and then the end. How do you want the story to end? And I'm not saying that the ending now is going to be the ending when you're actually at the ending part for drawing your manga, because the ending can change. My ending for Chikara when I wrote it in 2018 is completely different now. I'm not saying that the thing you're writing right now with your story mapping is going to be the final design 10 years from now once you're almost done with the manga, because it can change, things can be added, so don't feel like you're pressured to make something perfect now. Story mapping is all about mapping out your story. Very rough, very conceptual, just trying to get your ideas on paper. Now, the final part of all this, which I mentioned in the first episode, and I'm going to say it again because I really want you guys to do it. I really want you guys to take this advice and actually do it. Tell your friends, tell your family, and tell strangers. Trust me, once you're coming up with your story mapping, all of that's well and good if you're doing it yourself, but if no one's giving you criticism or critiquing it or telling you whether this is good or not, this is all literally for nothing, because if you do all of this work and don't get any advice on it, and we move on through the series, and let's say you actually do end up with your first volume of your manga, if the story's terrible and you didn't do all your research and inspiration and get advice, it's gonna flop. And I'm sorry to say that. I'm not trying to hurt anybody's feelings. I'm just being honest. Your story will flop if you don't do your research and get the foundation solid before you start laying out anything else. So make sure you tell your friends, tell your family, tell strangers, get their advice. Literally, it will save your story if it's in a place of confusion and death. And alright guys, that is it for this episode. Episode 2 was a little bit shorter than the first one because story mapping, like I said, it can be detailed if you want it to be, but it does not have to be. It can be super simple and super just conceptual right now, because this is still the beginning of your story process. We haven't finalized anything yet. So next episode is where the fun begins, character designing. We're still researching and we're still gathering inspiration before any of you guys put pencil to paper. But, well, we'll see. Maybe at the end there might be a little drawing. Maybe. Just a little bit. We'll see. As always, guys, I appreciate all the support. You guys killed it on the last video. We're almost up to, I think, 800 views. Tons of likes, tons of comments. We're almost to 1K subscribers. I really appreciate all the support on that last video. So I hope you guys enjoyed this one just as much as you did episode 1. Make sure you like and share this video. Send it to your manga friends. Anybody that you know that loves manga and wants to be a manga artist or is already a manga artist. Send this to them. I'm sure my advice can help people whether they're well into their series or just starting out. And that's all for me, guys. I appreciate all of everything. And I will see you guys for episode 3.